That's how long Lyra Frostwind had between the claiming bell and forced sedation at the winter solstice ceremony. 15 degrees below zero on Glacier Ridge, Montana. 4 council trackers hunting her through the darkness. Zero chance of survival without shelter. The 1992 Frostborn Purge eliminated 41 bloodline carriers in one night. Lyra Frostwind, age 19, was meant to be victim 42. But the daughter of winter doesn't surrender easily. The morning had started like any other deception. Lyra stood in the greenhouse behind Ashford Estate, her breath creating pale clouds in air that should have been warm. The heating system ran at 70 degrees, yet frost crept across the windows in delicate spirals. Her doing. Always her doing now. She'd been practicing for 13 months, ever since her 18th birthday, when rage had transformed her bathroom into a crystalline cathedral. Water in the pipes had frozen solid. Condensation on the mirror became intricate ice fractals. Even the air itself had crystallized, hanging suspended in glittering particles that caught the light like suspended diamonds. She'd stared at her hands for 10 minutes that night, caught between terror and exhilaration before the heat of her panic melted everything back to normal. Her mother was supposed to be dead. Elara Frostwind, killed in a car accident when Lyra was 4 years old. That's what Corbin Ashford claimed. That's what the death certificate stated in clean official typing. But death certificates could be purchased. Lies could be notarized. And truth had a way of hiding in attics for 15 years. Lyra pulled her hand back from the winter roses she'd been examining. Frost retreated into her skin like breath drawn inward, leaving no trace it had ever existed. She'd learned control through necessity, through frozen door handles that required explanation, through ice-slicked floors that raised suspicions, through one terrifying dawn when she'd woken encased in a cocoon of frozen air, unable to move until the sun's heat penetrated her bedroom. No one could know. Especially not Corbin, especially not today. The winter solstice ceremony waited tonight, the night when pack alliances renewed themselves through ritual and blood, when political marriages were announced with careful formality, when the Council of Seven exercised their authority over every supernatural community from Alaska to Florida. The night Lyra was scheduled to be claimed. She crossed the frozen lawn toward the main house. Ashford Estate sprawled across 200 acres of Glacier County wilderness, a monument to inherited wealth and carefully cultivated secrets. Corbin had built his fortune on real estate speculation and political connections, leveraging his status as a human who'd married into supernatural society through calculated charm and useful ignorance. Lyra had never understood how her mother, a frostborn from one of the oldest bloodlines, had ended up with someone like him. Until 6 months ago, when curiosity and a loose floorboard in the attic revealed 3 leather-bound journals hidden beneath decades of dust. The journals that changed everything. She entered through the kitchen, nodding to staff who'd watched her grow from child to young woman. They smiled with sympathy that made her skin crawl. Everyone knew what tonight meant. Everyone knew she had no choice in the matter. Everyone was wrong. Lyra climbed the servants' stairs to the 2nd floor. Her room occupied the east wing's far corner, positioned deliberately far from Corbin's study, where he conducted the business he never explained. She locked the door with fingers that wanted to tremble and retrieved the journals from their hiding place, beneath loose floorboards that had kept secrets longer than she'd been alive. Her mother's handwriting covered page after page in ink that had faded to brown. Dates, names, descriptions of abilities that should have remained impossible. The journals documented everything Elara Frostwind had discovered about the purge of 1992. 41 Frostborns eliminated in a single coordinated strike spanning 12 states. Men, women, children. Entire family lines erased between midnight and dawn. The official story claimed rogue shifter packs seeking territorial expansion. The truth lived in these pages, written in her mother's increasingly desperate hand. The council had ordered it. planned it, financed it, executed it with military precision. Lyra traced her finger down a list of names that read like a morgue register. Frost, winter, snow, cryo, glacier. Dozens of families with ice in their blood, all terminated because they represented a threat the council couldn't tolerate. Because Frostborns couldn't be controlled through traditional bonding magic that worked so effectively on other bloodlines. Because their power rivaled that of the strongest alphas and answered to no authority but their own will. Because they were free in a world the council wanted controlled. Her mother had survived by hiding, by marrying a human whose ambition exceeded his curiosity, by suppressing abilities that sang in her blood like frozen music, by trying to live quietly in a world that wanted her extinct. It hadn't been enough. Lyra closed the journal and pressed her palm flat against the leather cover. Ice spread across the surface in a pattern that matched her fingerprint exactly. A signature only she could create, proof of what she was, evidence of why tonight's ceremony could never happen. She had to leave, had to run, had to disappear before the claiming bell rang, and whatever ceremony the council had planned sealed her fate in ways she couldn't imagine and didn't want to discover. But first, she needed evidence that couldn't be dismissed or destroyed. Lyra waited until 3 in the afternoon when Corbin departed for his pre-ceremony meeting at the Great Hall. She watched his black Mercedes disappear down the quarter-mile driveway, then moved with purpose toward his study. The door was locked, standard precaution. She placed her hand on the brass handle and concentrated. Ice formed inside the mechanism, expanding with controlled pressure until the tumbler shifted and the lock surrendered with a soft click. The study smelled like expensive leather and scotch consumed alone. Corbin's desk dominated the space, a massive oak construction, covered in papers, electronics, and the accumulated debris of a man who built empires on other people's suffering. Lyra sat in his chair and powered on the computer with the hands that had stopped shaking. Fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. She'd learned his password 3 months ago through patient observation. He changed it monthly, but always followed the same pattern, estate plus the current year. Today's password, estate 2025. The desktop loaded with artificial cheerfulness. Lyra inserted a blank USB drive and began searching through files organized with meticulous care. 23 minutes to find what she needed. A folder buried 3 directory levels deep, labeled only with a date November 7th, 1992. The night that changed everything. The night that killed 41 people and orphaned her mother's entire bloodline. Inside were contracts written in legal language that couldn't disguise their purpose. Financial records showing transfers that made Lyra's stomach turn. Communication logs between Corbin and someone identified only as MV. The amounts scrolled past in numbing sequence. $50 million transferred in careful increments over 15 years. Payment for services rendered. Payment for silence maintained. Payment for delivery of one Frostborn daughter to council custody. There were photographs too. Crime scene documentation from the purge. Bodies frozen solid in positions that suggested their final moments had been agony incarnate. Faces locked in expressions that would haunt Lyra's dreams for years. She forced herself to examine each image, to memorize the faces, to understand exactly what the council was capable of when threatened. At the bottom of the folder sat a video file. She hesitated with the mouse hovering over it, then clicked. The footage was grainy shot from a security camera mounted high on a wall. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m., November 7th, 1992. The location appeared to be a warehouse, concrete walls, industrial, lighting, the kind of anonymous space where terrible things happened without witnesses. A woman stood in the center of frame, hands bound with silver cord that glowed faintly in the harsh lighting. Even through the poor video quality, Lyra recognized her from photographs in her mother's journals. Helena Frostwind, Elara's older sister, Lyra's aunt, whom she'd never known existed until 6 months ago. A figure stepped into frame from the left, female middle-aged, wearing council insignia that marked her as authority. She raised one hand and spoke words the security camera couldn't capture. Helena Frostwind's body convulsed. Ice erupted from her skin in jagged spikes, uncontrolled and violent, responding to whatever command the councilwoman had issued. Helena collapsed as the ice spread across concrete in crystalline patterns that looked almost beautiful until you remembered they were manifestations of a woman dying. Armed men moved in from the edges of frame. 3 shots rang out silently in the video. The ice shattered. Helena's body fell and didn't move again. The video ended with bureaucratic abruptness. Lyra sat frozen in the chair, her hands clenched so tightly that frost was forming on the desk surface beneath her palms. She forced herself to breathe, to focus, to finish what she'd started before emotion overwhelmed function. The USB drive blinked its completion. Transfer successful. Evidence secured. She ejected the drive, wiped her search history with practice keystrokes, and powered down the computer. The study door remained closed. Through the window, she could see nothing but winter landscape and gathering shadows. Then, gravel crunched in the driveway outside. Corbin was returning early. Lyra moved with desperate speed. She relocked the study door from inside using the same ice manipulation that had opened it, then turned to the window. The drop to ground level was 12 feet over frozen earth. She swung her legs over the sill, hung from the ledge for one heartbeat, then let go. She landed in a crouch that sent pain shooting through her ankles. Above her, she heard the study door open, heard Corbin's confusion as he found the room empty, but sensed something wrong in ways he couldn't articulate. "What the hell?" his voice carried through the open window. Lyra ran. She made it to her room through the servant's entrance and changed with frantic efficiency. Thermal layers designed for sub-zero exposure, waterproof jacket rated for Arctic conditions, hiking boots with traction that could grip ice. She stuffed the USB drive and her mother's journals into a backpack along with first aid supplies, water bottles, protein bars, and a fire starter kit. Not much, but enough to keep her alive until she found sanctuary or died trying. The claiming bell would ring at sunset. That gave her 97 minutes. She left through her bedroom window, climbing down the trellis that had facilitated midnight escapes throughout her teenage years. The late afternoon sun was sinking behind the mountains, painting snow-covered landscape in shades of orange and purple that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. Behind her, distantly, she heard shouting begin. The Great Hall sat in the center of Ashford territory, a massive timber structure built to accommodate 500 people during ceremonies that defined pack politics and supernatural hierarchy. Tonight, it would host the winter solstice ceremony, the most important gathering on the supernatural calendar. Lyra had attended every year since childhood. She knew the schedule with painful precision. Sunset, the claiming bell rings. 6 p.m. opening ceremonies begin. 7 p.m. pack alliances renewed through blood ritual. 8 p.m. bondings announced with formal proclamation. This year, she was supposed to be one of those announcements. Not a marriage, not even a traditional bonding between willing participants. Something else. Something the council called protective custody in their internal communications. A polite euphemism for imprisonment. She'd learned about it 3 weeks ago when enhanced hearing, another frostborn gift she was still learning to control, had picked up Corbin's phone conversation through 2 closed doors. His voice discussing delivery schedules and compensation structures. Talking about his daughter like she was livestock being prepared for market. The temperature was dropping as the sun descended. 15 degrees, now falling toward 0 as night approached. Lyra's breath created white plumes as she pushed through knee-deep snow. She'd covered maybe 3 miles when the first howl echoed behind her. Trackers. The council employed specialists for hunting rogues and runaways. 4-person team composed of shifters trained in pursuit and capture. They could track a scent for 50 miles through terrain that would kill normal humans. They could run for hours without tiring their enhanced stamina, making them nearly unstoppable once they locked onto prey. Lyra had maybe 15 minutes before they found her trail. She altered course, heading toward the steepest terrain, rocky outcroppings, and frozen waterfalls that would slow pursuit and force them to move carefully. The sun touched the horizon with its lower edge. In the distance, barely audible, across 3 miles of wilderness, the claiming bell began to ring. Tradition allowed 63 seconds for a claimed individual to present themselves. 63 seconds between the first toll and forced sedation authorization. 63 seconds to choose compliance or become prey. Lyra counted each toll as she ran. 10, 20, 40, 63. Silence fell across the winter landscape, then carried on wind that seemed to know her name. A voice amplified by magic boomed across the territory. Lyra Ashford has refused the claiming. The council authorizes immediate pursuit and retrieval. Reward for safe capture, $5 million. $5 million. More than most people would earn in multiple lifetimes. Every bounty hunter, desperate shifter, and mercenary within 3 states would be tracking her by morning. But first, she had to survive until morning. The terrain grew increasingly hostile. Lyra's legs burned from climbing slopes that should have required technical equipment. Her face went numb despite the thermal mask protecting exposed skin. The temperature had dropped to 10 degrees, then 5, then below 0 as darkness claimed the mountains. She was perhaps 5 miles from the estate when she saw them. 4 figures, moving with inhuman speed across the snow, closing the distance between them with terrifying efficiency. The trackers had found her trail and were closing in for capture. Lyra ran harder. Her boots slipped on hidden ice beneath snow. Branches tore at her jacket like clawed hands. The backpack's weight dragged at her shoulders, but abandoning it meant abandoning the evidence that could prove everything. Behind her, the trackers were howling, coordinating, communicating, getting closer with every second. A cliff face loomed ahead, a sheer granite wall rising 200 feet into darkness. At its base, barely visible in the dying light, was a shadow that might be an opening. A cave. Lyra didn't hesitate or reconsider. She sprinted for the entrance, sliding on loose scree that threatened to send her tumbling, catching herself on the rock face with hands that left frost patterns on stone. The opening was narrow, barely wide enough for her shoulders when she turned sideways. She squeezed through into absolute darkness. Fumbling produced a flashlight from her pack. The beam cut through blackness to reveal a tunnel descending into the mountain's heart. The walls were unnaturally smooth, almost polished. Strange symbols were carved into stone geometric patterns that seemed to shift and move in the flashlight's beam. Behind her at the cave entrance, voices echoed. She went inside. The Bearstone Sanctuary, no one enters there. Orders are orders. Move in. Lyra went deeper, driven by instinct and desperation. The tunnel twisted through rock, branched into multiple paths, narrowed and widened, seemingly at random. She chose directions based on nothing but gut feeling, just trying to create distance between herself and pursuit. The air grew colder. Her flashlight beam picked out more carvings, words in a language she shouldn't recognize but somehow did. The shapes of letters triggered something in her memory, like recalling dreams upon waking. Old Frostborn script, the language her people spoke before genocide made them extinct. She was inside a sanctuary, a place her ancestors built. No wonder the trackers hesitated. These caves were supposed to be cursed, legendary, forbidden to outsiders by traditions, older than the council itself. Lyra's boot caught on something and she stumbled forward. The flashlight fell from her hand, bounced once against the stone and went dark. Complete darkness swallowed everything. She dropped to her knees, hands searching the stone floor for the flashlight. Her fingers found it just as a sound froze her in place. Breathing, close, labored and wet with pain. Something else was in the cave with her. Lyra's hand closed on the flashlight. She shook it desperately. The bulb flickered, caught, held. Light flooded the tunnel in a harsh beam. 10 feet ahead, pressed against the far wall, was a wolf. not a normal wolf. This animal was massive, easily the size of a small horse. Its fur was silver, catching the light and reflecting it back in metallic gleams that seemed almost supernatural. But it was the eyes that froze Lyra in place. Intelligent, aware, human consciousness trapped in animal form. A shifter. The wolf's hind leg was caught in a bear trap, steel jaws buried deep in flesh and bone. Blood pooled on the stone floor in amounts that suggested the injury wasn't recent. The animal's breathing came in shallow, rapid gasps. Shock setting in, death approaching. Lyra knew she should run. This could be a trap, could be one of the trackers who'd shifted and circled ahead, could be anything in a world where nothing was what it seemed. But those eyes, they weren't aggressive, they weren't predatory. They were pleading in a way that transcended species. She moved closer slowly, hands visible and empty. The wolf watched her approach, but didn't growl, didn't bare teeth that could tear her throat out, just watched with an intensity that made her feel evaluated and found. "What worthy, trustworthy, easy," Lyra whispered. "I'm going to help. Please don't bite me." She knelt beside the trap, examining the mechanism with hands that wanted to shake. Old design, rusted but still functional. Heavy steel jaws designed to hold a grizzly bear. They'd crushed through muscle and scraped bone. The wolf would lose the leg if she couldn't get it free soon. The trap's mechanism was a spring-loaded design with a release plate, but the plate was corroded shut. She'd need tools to pry it open. Tools she didn't have. Or she'd need something else. Lyra placed both hands on the cold metal. She closed her eyes and reached for the power that lived in her blood. The power she'd been hiding for 13 months. The power that marked her as something the council wanted dead or controlled. Ice responded to her call like a faithful servant. It started as frost forming on the trap's surface. Then, crystals growing from the metal, spreading and multiplying with geometric precision. The trap grew white with buildup. The temperature around Lyra's hands dropped to -20, -30, -40 degrees in seconds. The steel began to crack with sounds like small caliber gunshots. Lyra pushed harder. The ice thickened, expanding inside the mechanism with relentless pressure. Metal groaned in protest. The wolf whimpered, but held perfectly still, as if it understood what she was trying to accomplish. With a sound like thunder in the enclosed space, the trap shattered. Broken pieces of metal and ice scattered across the stone floor. The wolf's leg was free, mangled, but no longer trapped. Lyra fell back against the tunnel wall, exhausted. Using that much power all at once had drained her completely. Her vision swam at the edges. The cold wasn't just around her anymore. It was inside her, seeping into bones and blood. The wolf moved despite its injury, despite the trauma and blood loss. It dragged itself closer to Lyra on 3 legs. Its massive head lowered until its muzzle touched her shoulder with surprising gentleness. Warmth flooded through her. Not physical heat, but something else. Something that felt like recognition at the cellular level. Like coming home after a journey so long you'd forgotten what home felt like. Her vision darkened at the edges and began to close in. The last thing she saw before unconsciousness claimed her was the wolf's eyes, silver and ancient, reflecting her flashlight beam. The last thing she felt was cold stone against her cheek. The last thing she heard was footsteps. Human, running. Someone had found them both. Lyra's consciousness flickered in and out like a failing bulb. She was aware of being moved with surprising care, of hands checking her pulse with professional efficiency, of voices, male speaking in urgent tones that suggested medical crisis. Core temperature 90 degrees, severe hypothermia. Get her closer to the fire. Strip the wet layers. What the hell did she do to Silver? That trap was reinforced steel. She's frostborn. Look at the ice patterns on the metal. Frostborn are extinct. Apparently not. Warmth began to return in painful increments. Her fingers and toes burned as circulation returned. Her chest felt compressed in a vice as her body tried to remember how to maintain its own heat. She tried to open her eyes but couldn't make her eyelids cooperate with mental commands. Time passed. Could have been minutes or hours. When Lyra finally managed to pry her eyes open, she found herself staring at a stone ceiling. Firelight danced across carved symbols. She was still in the cave, but deeper, in a chamber large enough to stand in with space for a fire and people. A fire crackled nearby with wood that shouldn't exist this deep underground. She was wrapped in a thermal blanket, wearing dry clothes that weren't hers. Her wet things hung near the fire, steaming. "Easy," a male voice close by. "Don't try to sit up yet." Lyra turned her head. The man crouching beside her was maybe 28, built like someone who did physical labor combined with combat training. Dark hair, sharp features, eyes that were currently gold instead of human brown. Shifter, Alpha, powerful enough that she could feel his presence like static electricity on her skin. She tried to scramble back and discovered her body wouldn't cooperate. Her muscles felt like frozen rubber that hadn't fully thawed. "I said easy." The man held up both hands, showing he was unarmed. "You saved Silver. That means we're not enemies." Silver." Lyra's voice came out as a painful croak. The man gestured to her left. The massive wolf lay near the fire, its injured leg bandaged and splintered with professional competence. The animal's eyes were open, watching her with that same intelligent awareness. "Silver's been trapped in that form for 2 years, the man said. "Council curse. We've been searching for him for 8 months. You led me straight to him by saving his life." "Who are you?" "Draven Ashcroft, AlphaKing of the Northern Territories." Lyra's blood turned colder than any ice she could create. The AlphaKing, the most powerful shifter in North America. The one the Council had been trying to force into breeding contracts for 5 years. The one who'd refused every time. "You're not here to take me back." Her voice barely qualified as a whisper. "To the Council, hell no." Draven's expression hardened into something dangerous. "I've been fighting them for half a decade. Why would I start helping them now?" He reached for something beside him and held it up. Lyra's backpack. Open. The journals visible inside along with the USB drive. "I checked your belongings while treating your hypothermia," Draven said. "Standard protocol. Your mother's journals, I recognize the handwriting. Elara Frostwain was researching the same thing I am. The same genocide the Council wants everyone to forget happened. You knew my mother. I knew of her. She was supposed to testify before the Pack Council in 2010 about Council corruption. She disappeared 2 weeks before the scheduled hearing. Official story was a car accident on black ice. I never believed it." Lyra pushed herself up despite protests from every muscle. "She's not dead. She's at Black Ridge facility. They've been holding her for 15 years. Draven went very still. "Black Ridge is a Council research station. Officially, it doesn't exist." "How do you know she's there?" "Because I have evidence." Lyra pulled the USB drive from her jacket pocket. She'd kept it on her person even while unconscious, tucked into an inner pocket she'd sewn herself. Everything. The purge, the payments to Corbin, the experiments, it's all documented. She held out the drive. Draven took it carefully like it might explode in his hand. "If this is real," he said slowly, "if you can actually prove the Council ordered the purge, it would change everything. Pack law, human law, international treaties, everything built on the assumption that the Council acts in good faith. It's real. I watched video footage of them executing my Aunt Helena." The fire popped. Silver's ears swiveled toward the cave entrance with sudden attention. Draven rose smoothly to his feet in one fluid motion. "We have company. The trackers found the cave mouth. How long until they find us? These tunnels are a maze. Could be hours. Could be 20 minutes. He looked at her with assessment in his eyes. "Can you walk?" Lyra tested her legs. They held her weight barely. "I can manage." "Then we go deeper. There are supposed to be old frostborn sanctuaries in these mountains, places even the Council can't reach. If your blood reacts to the carvings the way I think it might, you could be able to find them." "Why are you helping me?" Draven's gold eyes met hers directly. "Because when I touched you to check your pulse, I felt something I've only felt once before in my life. Something that told me you're not just some random frostborn survivor the Council once captured." "What did you feel?" "A bond. Mate recognition." He said it matter-of-factly, like commenting on weather. I don't force bonds, ever. But the magic doesn't lie about these things. For whatever reason, you and I are connected at the blood level. Lyra stared at him. A mate bond. The thing the council wanted to force on her through ceremony and magic, designed to enslave. Except this hadn't been forced. It had just happened naturally when two compatible people met. I don't know you, she said. I know that's why I'm not doing anything about it. The bond is there. But it's dormant. It'll stay that way until we both decide otherwise. Draven offered his hand. Right now the only thing that matters is staying alive. You saved Silver. That means I owe you a life debt. Let me repay it by getting you somewhere safe. Lyra looked at his extended hand. She could refuse. Could try to run on her own. Could die alone in these caves with council trackers closing in and no idea where she was going. Or she could trust the Alpha King who'd been fighting the same enemy she was. She took his hand. His grip was warm and steady. He pulled her to her feet and held on for an extra second, making sure she was stable before releasing. Can you carry your pack? He asked. Yes. Good. Silver's injured, but he can still track using senses we don't have. We follow him deeper into the mountain. These caves go down for miles. Somewhere in there is a true sanctuary, a place your people built to be safe from exactly this kind of hunt. From the entrance tunnel, distantly came the sound of voices echoing through stone. The trackers were inside the cave system. Draven extinguished the fire with a kick that sent embers scattering. Darkness rushed in to fill the space. Then Silver moved, and Lyra saw that the wolf's fur was glowing faintly bioluminescent silver light that illuminated the cave like captured moonlight. Follow him, Draven said quietly. Stay close to me. Don't touch the walls unless he does first. Some of these passages are trapped with old magic that doesn't distinguish between friend and enemy. Days moved into deeper darkness with only Silver's glow to guide them. The wolf led, despite his injury, limping but determined. His glowing fur provided just enough light to see the path immediately ahead without revealing their position to distant pursuit. The tunnel descended at a steep angle, spiraling down into the mountain's heart like a corkscrew. The carvings on the walls grew more elaborate with every 100 feet. Lyra found herself reading them as they passed the old Frostborn script, translating itself in her mind without conscious effort. Here lies the sanctuary of the first winter. Here the ice blessed may find refuge. Here the blood of winter commands the stone. Her hand touched the wall without conscious thought. The moment her skin made contact, the carvings blazed with blue-white light. Ice spread from the contact point in elaborate fractals, racing along the tunnel walls like living organisms. Silver stopped, turned. His eyes fixed on something ahead that the others couldn't yet see. The tunnel had ended in a solid wall of rock. But as the ice from Lyra's touch reached it, the stone began to change. Cracks appeared, widened. The wall split down the center and swung inward like a massive door built from the mountain itself. Beyond was a chamber that stole Lyra's breath. It was enormous, cathedral-sized. The ceiling rose 50 feet overhead, covered in stalactites of pure ice that glowed with internal light in shades of blue and silver and pale gold. The floor was smooth stone carved with intricate patterns that pulsed with luminescence. At the chamber's center sat a raised basin made from a single piece of black stone filled with water so clear it looked like liquid glass. The first winter sanctuary. Draven breathed. I didn't think it still existed. I thought the council had destroyed them all. Silver limped forward into the chamber. The moment his paws touched the carved floor, his form began to shimmer. Light exploded from his body, bright enough to make Lyra shield her eyes against the glare. When she could look again, the wolf was gone. In its place stood a young man, maybe 25, naked and shivering. Dark hair, lean muscle, wrapped around a frame built for speed. Silver eyes that matched the wolf's exactly. He stared at his hands like they belonged to a stranger. 2 years, he whispered. I was stuck for 2 years. Draven was already moving, pulling a spare shirt from his pack and tossing it to the younger man. Silas. It's me, brother. Silas caught the shirt and pulled it on with hands that shook. The curse just broke. The moment I entered this place, it shattered like glass. He turned to face Lyra, dropped to one knee despite his injured leg, ignoring the pain. You saved me, Silas said formally. You broke the trap when I couldn't shift to heal myself. You led me home when I'd given up all hope of returning. Lyra Frostwind, I owe you a life debt by the old laws. I don't even know you, Lyra protested. You know him now, Draven said quietly. He's my younger brother, Silas Thornwood, second heir to the Northern Pack. The council cursed him 2 years ago when he refused a direct order to hunt down and execute a Frostborn family hiding in Washington state. The pieces clicked together in Lyra's mind. The trackers outside had said the name Silver with recognition. Because Silas was famous in supernatural circles, the Alpha Prince who'd chosen exile and curse over executing innocent children. Behind them, echoing up from the tunnel they descended, came the sound of pursuit growing closer. The trackers had found their trail through the maze. They can't enter, Draven said with confidence. Not unless they have Frostborn blood. This sanctuary only opens for you and those you choose to bring with you. Then we're safe. For now. He moved to the chamber's far wall, examining the carvings with tactical assessment. But they'll camp outside and wait us out. We'll need food, water, and a plan that doesn't involve starving to death in a magical cave. Lyra looked around the sanctuary, at the glowing ice ceiling, at the ritual basin, at the two men who'd become her unlikely allies in the last 6 hours. 63 seconds. That's how long she'd had between the claiming bell and sedation authorization. She'd been running for 6 hours now. 6 hours that felt like 6 days compressed into moments of terror and exhaustion. And this somehow was only the beginning of something larger than escape. There's more, Silas said. He was staring at the basin at the chamber's center. Look at the inscription around the edge. Lyra moved closer. The black stone was covered in text, old Frostborn script arranged in concentric circles. She read it aloud without thinking, her voice echoing in the vast space. Here lies the power of choice. Here the bond is made freely or not at all. Here two souls may merge as equals, sharing strength, sharing life, sharing all. Let no council dictate what the blood knows. Let no law override what the heart chooses. This is the first law. This is the true bonding. Silence filled the chamber like a held breath. That's why they destroyed the sanctuaries, Draven said quietly. That's why they killed the Frostborns with such systematic thoroughness. Because your people remembered how bonding was supposed to work. Not forced, not controlled, free. Lyra's hands shook as she stared at the inscription. The USB drive in her pocket felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Evidence of genocide, proof of conspiracy, the truth the council had murdered 41 people to hide. We can't stay here forever, she said. No, Draven agreed. But we can rest, plan, figure out our next move while we're protected. The trackers can't reach us. We have time to think strategically instead of just reacting. From the tunnel entrance far above, a voice echoed down, amplified by magic, female, full of authority and barely controlled rage. Lyra Ashford, this is Morgana Vale Council Prime. I know you can hear me. I know you're in the sanctuary. I'm prepared to be patient, but understand this clearly. Every hour you hide is another hour your father suffers the consequences of your defiance. Come out peacefully, and I guarantee his safety. Refuse, and I'll make sure he pays for your crimes. Lyra's blood turned to ice. Morgana Vale, the signature MV from the financial documents on her USB drive. The council member who'd orchestrated the purge, her mother's sister. She's bluffing, Silas said firmly. Corbin's a coward, but he's useful to them. They won't kill him. You don't know that for certain. Lyra moved toward the tunnel entrance before Draven's hand on her shoulder stopped her. If you go out there, you're dead or worse. They'll extract your powers, use you to create weapons, experiment on you the same way they did to your mother. His voice was hard. Is that what Elara would want? For you to sacrifice yourself to save the man who sold you? Lyra closed her eyes. He was right. She knew he was right on every logical level. But logic didn't make it easier to listen to threats against the only parent she'd known for 15 years. Then what do we do? She asked. Draven's grip on her shoulder tightened fractionally. Grounding. We do what you've been doing since the moment you found those journals. We fight back. We expose them. We end this cycle. 3 of us against the entire council and their resources. 3 of us, Draven said, with evidence of genocide, with proof of corruption that can't be dismissed or buried, with a sanctuary that can protect us while we build a case. He moved to stand in front of her. I've been fighting them for 5 years alone. I've been waiting for a weapon that could actually hurt them instead of just annoying them. You just gave me that weapon. Silas stood as well, limping but determined. I've been cursed for 2 years, hunted, labeled a traitor for refusing to murder children. I want them to pay for what they've done. Lyra looked at both of them. An Alpha King who'd refused every bonding the council tried to force. A prince who'd chosen curse and exile over executing innocents. 2 men who had every reason to run as far from council attention as possible. Instead, they were choosing to stand with her. They'll come for us with everything they have, she said. Let them, Draven replied. From the tunnel, Morgana's voice called out again. Last chance, Lyra. Walk out now or I start making examples of everyone who helped you. Lyra turned her back on the tunnel, on the threat, on the woman who'd murdered her aunt and imprisoned her mother for 15 years. She faced the sanctuary, the glowing eyes, the ritual basin, the promise carved in stone that spoke of freedom and choice. Here the blood of winter commands. Then we make them regret every choice that led them here, Lyra said. And deep in the mountain, in a sanctuary built by her people, 3 centuries before the council existed, the ice began to sing with a sound like crystal chimes in winter wind. The first thing Lyra learned about sanctuary life was that safety came with its own kind of claustrophobia. They'd been underground for 18 hours when Draven made his first systematic attempt to treat her injuries. The frostbite wasn't severe, mostly superficial tissue damage on her fingertips and toes, but it needed proper attention before infection could take hold. Hold still, he said, kneeling beside her with a medical kit spread across the stone floor. Lyra watched him work with practiced efficiency. His hands were surprisingly gentle for someone his size, cleaning and bandaging with the confidence of experience. You've done this before. Field medicine is required training for Alpha heirs. We don't always have access to pack doctors during territorial disputes. He wrapped gauze around her left index finger with careful precision. Besides, Silas used to get himself into trouble regularly when we were younger. I learned fast or watched him lose body parts. Silas, sitting near the ritual basin while his leg healed, snorted with amusement. That was one time, and I was 12. You tried to fight a full-grown grizzly bear. It was threatening pack territory. You weighed 90 pounds soaking wet. Lyra found herself almost smiling despite everything. The easy banter between brothers felt surreal against the backdrop of their situation. Above them, somewhere beyond, tons of rock and protective magic council trackers waited for them to emerge. Beyond that, Morgana Vale was likely planning her next move with the cold calculation of someone who'd orchestrated genocide. And somewhere in a facility 40 miles north, Elara Frostwind remained a prisoner. The smile died before it fully formed. Draven noticed. He always noticed. We'll get her out. You can't promise that. I can promise that sitting here feeling helpless doesn't serve anyone. He finished with her fingers and moved to examine her feet. Right now, you need to heal. Then, we plan our next move strategically. How long can we realistically stay here before they find a way to force us out? Depends on how patient Morgana is willing to be. The sanctuary walls are solid and even explosives wouldn't penetrate this deep. But they can wait, cut off our exit, try to starve us into surrender. Silas stood and limped over to join them, his leg healing faster now that the curse was broken. They won't wait that long. Morgana's ambitious and impatient. She wants Lyra's power once it's soon enough to matter. She'll try something more aggressive. Like what? Lyra asked. Like threatening people you care about until emotional pressure breaks you. Like bringing in specialists who might be able to breach sanctuary wards. Like offering deals she has absolutely no intention of honoring. Silas sat down across from them. I spent 2 years watching council operations from the outside while cursed. They're predictable in their ruthlessness. Draven finished bandaging Lyra's feet and sat back on his heels. Then, we need to be unpredictable. We need to move first to strike before they expect it. With what resources? Lyra gestured around the chamber. We have a magical cave, some supplies, and evidence they'll claim is fabricated the moment we present it. We have more than that. Draven pulled a satellite phone from his pack. Council jamming can't penetrate this deep underground. I've got contacts, allied packs who've been waiting for a legitimate reason to challenge council authority. How many? 15 packs confirmed, maybe 20 if we can prove what's on that USB drive is genuine. Lyra pulled the drive from her pocket. Such a small thing to contain so much documented death. It's real. Everything on here is proof of the purge, financial records, communication logs, video footage of executions. Then we use it strategically. Draven took the phone and began typing with focused intensity. I'm reaching out to Maya Winters. She leads the Northern Pack Alliance out of Idaho. If anyone can mobilize forces quickly, it's her. While Draven worked, Lyra stood and walked toward the far end of the chamber. The ice ceiling cast everything in pale blue light that reminded her of winter mornings before her world had shattered. Of her mother braiding her hair before school. Of a life that felt like it had belonged to someone else entirely. She'd been running for less than a day, and already everything had changed beyond recognition. Hey! Silas appeared beside her quietly. You're thinking too loud. I don't even know what I'm thinking anymore. And you're thinking about all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. About how you're 19 and shouldn't be fighting a shadow war against immortal politicians with unlimited resources. About how your father sold you and your mother's been tortured for 15 years, and somehow you're supposed to fix all of it with ice powers you barely understand and can't fully control. He paused. Close. Lyra looked at him with surprise. Uncomfortably close. I felt exactly the same way when they cursed me, like I'd been handed a starring role in a play I never auditioned for. Like everyone expected me to know my lines, but nobody had bothered to give me the script. Silas touched the bandage on his leg absently. At first I ran, hid, felt sorry for myself and raged at the injustice. How did you get past that? I realized something important. The council doesn't curse people who don't matter to their plans. They don't hunt people who aren't genuinely dangerous to their power structure. The fact that they wanted me permanently stuck as a wolf meant I'd done something that terrified them. Refusing to kill children terrified them. No, having a functioning conscience terrified them. Being willing to sacrifice my status, my comfort, my very humanity for what's right, that's what scared them. He met her eyes directly. You scared them too. That's why they've been so desperately trying to control you. Why they paid Corbin $50 million. Why Morgana herself is up there right now instead of sending subordinates to handle it. You're not just a surviving Frostborn. You're living proof that they failed to erase your people completely. You're the thing they tried to genocide, still standing and breathing. Lyra's hands clenched involuntarily. Ice spread across her palms in response to her emotional state. I don't feel dangerous. I feel absolutely terrified. Good. Terrified people are careful and strategic. Overconfident people make fatal mistakes. Silas smiled slightly. Use the fear. Let it sharpen your thinking instead of paralyzing you. Then show them exactly what a daughter of winter can do when she stops running and starts fighting. Behind them, Draven stood from where he'd been working with the phone. Maya's in. She's mobilizing 12 packs as we speak, about 200 trained fighters. She wants to meet in 3 days to discuss coordinated strategy. Where? Lyra asked. Northern Pack headquarters, 60 miles east of here, just inside the Idaho border. Draven pocketed the phone carefully. It's heavily fortified. Council can't touch it without triggering an all-out war. They're not prepared to fight. How do we get there if Morgana's people are camped outside the sanctuary entrance? There are other exits from this cave system. These tunnels connect to dozens of surface points across a 100-mile radius. We just need to find one far enough from the trackers to give us a head start. Silas limped back to the ritual basin and studied the carvings around its edge with renewed interest. These symbols aren't just decorative, they form a map of the tunnel network. Lyra joined him, examining the carved lines more carefully. The circles of old Frostborn script did form patterns when you looked at them correctly. Branching lines that could represent tunnels, geometric shapes that might indicate chambers or surface exits. She placed her hand on the cold stone. Ice responded immediately, racing along the carved lines and lighting them up in precise sequence. The pattern became crystal clear. "It's showing us the safe paths," she said with growing excitement. "The routes without traps or structural collapse." Draven moved to study the illuminated map from a different angle. "This exit here, it looks like it emerges near the Clearwater River. That's 40 miles from our current position, but only 20 miles from Northern Pack territory. 40 miles underground." Silas shook his head doubtfully. "That'll take days of constant travel, maybe a full week if the passages are as difficult as I'm imagining. We have food for 3 days if we ration carefully, water for 5 if we're strategic." Draven looked at Lyra with assessment. "Can you navigate us there using this map?" She studied the glowing lines intently. Something about the patterns felt instinctively familiar, like muscle memory from a life she'd never lived. "I think so. The symbols are translating themselves in my head somehow. It's like the sanctuary recognizes my blood and wants to help. Because it was built specifically for you, for Frostborns who needed protection." Draven began repacking supplies with military efficiency. "We leave in 2 hours. That gives us time to rest properly and prepare mentally." "Men gives the trackers time to reposition their forces," Silas pointed out. "They can reposition all they want. They don't know which exit we're using from dozens of possibilities. By the time they figure it out, we'll be long gone and protected by Maya's forces." Lyra hoped desperately that he was right. They rested for 90 minutes. Lyra tried to sleep, but her mind refused to quiet. She kept seeing the video footage of her aunt's execution, kept hearing Morgana's voice, promising consequences, kept thinking about her mother locked in a facility specifically designed to drain Frostborn power. Finally, she gave up on sleep and walked back to the ritual basin. The water inside was perfectly still, reflecting the ice ceiling like a flawless mirror. She stared at her reflection, same face she'd seen every morning for 19 years. But the eyes looking back felt fundamentally different, older, harder, changed by knowledge that couldn't be unlearned. "Can't sleep either." Draven's voice came from behind her. "Too much in my head that won't stop spinning." He moved to stand beside her, close but not touching. "Want to talk about it? Would it actually help?" "Probably not. But sometimes speaking fears out loud makes them seem smaller and more manageable." Lyra considered that for a long moment. "I'm afraid we're going to fail catastrophically. That we'll get to Northern Pack headquarters and they'll realize the evidence isn't enough to challenge the council. That Morgana will spin some convincing story and the other packs will believe her because she's established authority and I'm just some teenager who ran away from a ceremony." "You're not just some teenager. I'm 19 years old. I've been using my powers for barely over a year. I have no combat training, no political connections, no authority of my own. Why would anyone with sense listen to me?" Draven was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Do you know why I refused the first bonding ceremony 5 years ago? Because you don't believe in forcing bonds. That's part of it. But the real reason was the girl they'd chosen for me, Sarin Vale. She was 16 years old, absolutely terrified. She begged me not to go through with the ceremony, said she'd rather die than be bound to someone she didn't choose." His voice went distant with memory. I looked into her eyes and saw genuine suicidal desperation. Lyra looked at him with new understanding. What did you do? I stopped the ceremony halfway through, told the council I wouldn't participate in enslaving a child. They threatened everything I valued: my position, my pack, my life. He met her eyes directly. I was 23 years old, minimal combat experience beyond training exercises. No real political power because I just inherited the Alpha King title after my father's sudden death. Every advisor told me I was throwing away my authority over one girl's feelings. But you did it anyway. I did it anyway, because authority built on forcing people into bonds they don't want isn't authority worth having or keeping. He turned to face her fully. You ask why anyone would listen to you. Because you have something most politicians completely lack. You have documented truth, you have genuine courage, and you have ice in your veins that scares the hell out of people who've built their entire power structure on comfortable lies. Before Lyra could respond, Silas called from across the chamber. We've got movement on the phone's sensors. Someone's using powerful magic nearby to scan the cave system. Draven moved with impressive speed. He was at his brother's side in 3 long strides, taking the phone and checking the display with tactical focus. Scanning magic! They're trying to map the entire cave system somehow. Can they penetrate the sanctuary wards? Lyra asked with growing alarm. Not directly through the protections, but they might be able to trace the power signature back to other connected chambers we'll need to pass through. Draven's expression hardened with decision. We need to move now. If they identify our exit point before we reach it, they'll have forces waiting in ambush. They gathered supplies in controlled chaos, packs secured with practiced efficiency, weapons checked and ready, routes memorized from the glowing map. Lyra took one last look at the ritual basin, at the promise carved in stone about bonds made freely. She wondered distantly if she'd ever see this place again. The tunnel leading away from the sanctuary was uncomfortably narrow. They moved in single file, Draven in front, then Lyra, then Silas, bringing up the rear despite his healing injury. The ice map had shown a route that descended deeper before angling gradually upward toward the surface. 40 miles through mountain darkness and unknown dangers. The first 2 hours were relatively straightforward. The tunnel maintained consistent width and the floor remained navigable. Lyra kept one hand on the wall, using her developing ice sense to feel for structural weaknesses or hidden passages. The stone hummed under her touch, responding to her frostborn blood with something like recognition. There's something ahead, she said quietly. A branch point, 3 different paths. Draven stopped and activated his headlamp. The beam cut through darkness to reveal exactly what Lyra had sensed. The tunnel split into 3 distinct directions. Which one? He asked simply. Lyra closed her eyes and pressed both palms flat against the stone. Ice spread from the contact points, seeking and searching through rock. The leftmost tunnel felt dead, collapsed, somewhere ahead impassable. The center passage showed concerning heat signatures, probably lava flows from ancient volcanic activity. The right tunnel was cold, ancient, safe enough. Right path, she said with confidence. They took the right passage. It descended sharply, forcing them to climb down rather than walk. Lyra's arms burned from gripping stone handholds. Her breath came in labored gasps, but the path remained passable. 4 hours into their journey, they reached a serious obstacle. The tunnel opened into a cavern that stretched 50 feet across and disappeared into darkness both above and below. A chasm. The only way forward was a natural stone bridge, perhaps 3 feet wide with absolutely no railings. Of course, Silas muttered darkly. Why would anything be remotely easy? Draven tested the bridge carefully with his weight. It held without shifting. Single file. Don't look down into the chasm. If you start to fall, grab the stone and hold on tight. We'll pull you back up. He went first, moving with the careful confidence of someone who'd faced danger before. Lyra followed. The bridge was rough stone, providing decent grip for her boots. But the darkness below seemed to pull at her with malevolent gravity. She could feel the depth even without seeing it. Hundreds of feet of empty air. Halfway across, her right foot slipped on loose pebbles. She caught herself immediately dropping to hands and knees on the narrow bridge. Her pack shifted violently, trying to pull her backward into the abyss. Below her, she heard the sound of falling stones disappearing into silence that suggested a very, very long drop. "Don't move suddenly." Draven's voice was controlled and calm. "I'm coming back for you." "No, I'm fine." Lyra forced herself to breathe slowly and think clearly. She was a frostborn. Ice was her natural element. This stone bridge was just rock waiting to be frozen into better grip. She placed both palms flat on the bridge surface. Ice spread from her hands in a thin but effective layer, creating traction where there had been dangerously smooth stone. She continued forward on hands and knees, leaving a trail of enhanced grip behind her. "That's absolutely brilliant," Silas called from behind. "The ice is giving us perfect traction." They crossed the rest of the chasm using Lyra's ice path without further incident. On the far side, Draven helped her to her feet with steady hands. "Quick thinking under pressure. Desperate thinking," she corrected. "Often the same thing." They continued deeper into the mountain. The tunnel system proved more complex than even the map had suggested. Passages branched and connected in confusing patterns. Chambers opened up unexpectedly. Twice they had to backtrack when routes proved completely impassable. 8 hours into their journey, they stopped to rest in a small cavern with a freshwater spring trickling from the ceiling. Draven rationed food carefully, while Silas kept alert watch at the entrance. Lyra sat with her back against cold stone and tried not to think about the fact that they were miles underground with council forces hunting them. "Here." Draven handed her a protein bar and water bottle. "Eat slowly. We're pacing supplies for a minimum of 3 full days." Lyra ate mechanically the food, tasting like cardboard. "How far have we actually come?" "Maybe 12 miles in straight line distance, less when you account for all the winding. These tunnels spiral." He sat beside her with his own meager meal. "We're making decent time considering the difficult terrain. Will it get significantly worse ahead?" "Probably. The map showed some extremely tight passages in the next section. We might have to crawl through spaces barely wide enough for shoulders." "Perfect. Because crawling through mountain darkness while being actively hunted wasn't stressful enough already." Silas suddenly tensed at the entrance, his enhanced senses detecting something. "I smell smoke. Faint, but definite." Draven was on his feet instantly. "From which direction?" "Behind us. The direction we came from." They moved to the entrance and peered back down the tunnel cautiously. At first, Lyra saw nothing unusual. Then, distant but unmistakable, a faint orange glow appeared. "They're smoking us out," Draven said grimly. "Burning something at multiple entrance points, trying to drive us toward a specific exit they've already identified." "Which means they figured out the tunnel system somehow." Silas finished the thought. "Or they're making educated guesses and covering likely options. Either way, we can't go back." Draven turned to Lyra with focused intensity. "Can you sense if there are alternate routes? The map didn't show hidden passages." Lyra pressed her hands firmly to the cavern wall. The stone was ancient and dense, holding centuries of mountain secrets. She pushed her ice sense deeper than before, feeling for voids in the rock, for spaces that shouldn't exist according to normal geology. There, behind the far wall, a narrow crack barely wide enough for a human body, but beyond it, she sensed genuine open space, another tunnel branch. "There's something behind this wall," she said with growing excitement. A hidden passage the map didn't indicate. "Can you reach it?" Lyra studied the rock carefully. It was thick, maybe 3 feet of solid stone, but stone always had weaknesses, microscopic fissures where ice could find purchase and expand. She placed both hands flat on the wall and called her power with focused intention. Ice formed immediately, seeking out the invisible cracks in the stone, finding them, expanding with relentless pressure. The temperature around her hands dropped to -40 degrees in seconds. The wall began to crack with sounds like gunshots. "Get back," Draven warned, pulling Silas away from the wall. Lyra pushed harder, pouring more power into the ice. Crystals formed and grew and multiplied. The cracks widened visibly. The wall groaned under impossible pressure. With a sound like thunder, a section of wall collapsed inward. Dust billowed out in choking clouds. When it cleared, a narrow opening was revealed. Beyond it lay darkness and possibility. That, Silas said with admiration, is going to make them completely rethink their strategy. They squeezed through the opening one at a time. The passage beyond was barely wide enough for Draven's shoulders. They moved sideways packs, scraping against the stone with every step. Lyra's breath came fast and shallow. The walls seemed to press in from both sides, threatening to crush her. "How far does this go?" she asked, fighting rising panic. "Just keep moving forward," Draven said, ahead of her. "It has to open up eventually. Passages like this don't continue indefinitely." It did open up after 20 claustrophobic minutes that felt like hours. The narrow crack widened into a tunnel that was blessedly spacious. Lyra sucked in air, fighting down panic she hadn't fully realized was building. Silas emerged last, looking pale. "I'm never complaining about tight spaces in nightmares again. That was worse than any dream I've ever had." They pressed onward with renewed urgency. The smoke smell faded behind them. Whatever route the council had planned to force them toward, they'd successfully evaded it. 12 hours underground now, Lyra had completely lost any sense of normal time. Her body ached from constant climbing. Her hands were raw from gripping stone, but the ice map in her mind showed they were making real progress. Maybe 20 miles covered. Halfway to their destination, they rested again in a chamber where sealing water dripped with the patience of millennia. Draven checked the satellite phone with focused attention. "Maya confirms forces are gathering as planned. She wants us to arrive in 48 hours maximum." He looked at Lyra and Silas seriously. "That gives us less than 2 days to cover the remaining distance." "We can make it," Lyra said, because she had to believe that. Silas was more pragmatic. "My leg is slowing us down significantly. The curse broke, but the trap did real structural damage. I am healing, but not fast enough for this pace." "Then we adjust our pace," Draven said flatly. "We're not leaving you behind." "I'm not suggesting you do. I'm suggesting I create a diversion. Lead any pursuit away from your route while you two reach the exit safely." "No." The word came from both Draven and Lyra simultaneously with matching intensity. Silas looked between them with surprise. "I'm the logical choice for a decoy operation. I'm injured, and I'm not essential to the mission's success. Lyra has the evidence, you have the authority, I have a limp and a death wish." "You're my brother," Draven said with absolute finality. "I didn't spend 2 years searching for you just to watch you sacrifice yourself in a cave. And you saved my life," Lyra added firmly. "Led me to safety when I would have died from hypothermia. I'm not abandoning you now." Silas opened his mouth to argue further, then stopped. Something in their expressions made him reconsider. "Fine, but if I slow us down too much, we revisit this conversation." They didn't have to, because 40 minutes later the decision was made for them by forces beyond their control. The tunnel they were following opened suddenly into the largest chamber they'd encountered yet. It stretched hundreds of feet in every direction, the ceiling lost in darkness high above. And in the center of the vast space, illuminated by a single shaft of moonlight from some distant surface opening, stood a solitary figure. Female, middle-aged, wearing council insignia that marked her as ultimate authority. Morgana Vale. "Hello, Lyra," she said, her voice echoing in the massive space with perfect acoustics. "Thank you for being so predictably desperate. I've been waiting here for 3 hours. Draven moved immediately to stand protectively in front of Lyra. "The sanctuary wards should have kept you out." "They did keep me out," Morgana smiled, with cold satisfaction. "But I don't need to enter sanctuaries when I can simply wait at the logical destinations. I studied the same ancient maps you're using, AlphaKing. I know exactly where this tunnel system exits to the surface, and I know you're running desperately low on supplies and time." "What do you want?" Lyra called out, stepping around Draven despite his protective positioning. "What I've always wanted with singular focus, your cooperation, your power, your voluntary surrender to council custody." Morgana took a measured step forward. I'm prepared to offer a reasonable deal. You come with me peacefully, submit to power extraction procedures that will leave you alive and relatively unharmed. In exchange, I release your mother from Black Ridge facility immediately. Lyra's heart hammered against her ribs. You're lying. Am I? Or am I simply a practical businesswoman making a straightforward transaction? Morgana pulled out a phone and turned it to show the screen. Video footage. A woman in a cryopod, unconscious but clearly alive. Elara Frostwind. Mom, Lyra whispered involuntarily. She's alive currently. For now. Her condition is stable but deteriorating steadily. Every day we extract a little more power from her system. In another month, there won't be enough left of her mind to save, even if we wanted to. Morgana's expression was almost sympathetic. I don't particularly enjoy this, niece, but the council's work is far too important to let sentiment interfere with progress. Niece, Silas repeated with shock. Didn't she tell you? Morgana's smile widened with cruel pleasure. Elara and I are sisters. Were sisters before she chose to betray our family. By agreeing to testify against council interests, I did what I had to do to protect our legacy and our power. Lyra felt physically sick. Her mother's own sister had imprisoned her, had drained her systematically for 15 years, had murdered their entire extended family. You're completely insane, she said. I'm practical and effective. Now do we have a deal? Your freedom for hers. Draven's hand closed on Lyra's shoulder in warning. Don't. But Lyra was already moving forward, despite every rational thought screaming at her to stop. Let me see real proof, actual proof that you'll release her and not just kill us both. Lyra, no, Draven said sharply. She ignored him. She walked across the chamber toward Morgana, each step echoing in the vast space. Behind her, she heard Draven and Silas following, but she raised her hand to stop them. Just me, she called back firmly. This is my choice to make. She stopped 10 feet from Morgana, close enough to see the woman's face clearly in the moonlight, to see the undeniable resemblance to her mother in the shape of the eyes, the line of the jaw, the structure of the face. Show me, Lyra demanded. Morgana held out the phone. Lyra took it and watched the video loop 3 times. Her mother, alive, suffering, imprisoned. She handed the phone back. How do I know you'll actually honor this deal? You don't have any guarantees, but what real choice do you have? Morgana extended her hand. Come with me now, let us extract what we need from your bloodline. I promise the process will be as painless as possible under the circumstances, and your mother goes free immediately. Lyra looked at the offered hand, then back at Draven and Silas standing together in the darkness with expressions of protective concern. Then she looked at Morgana and smiled. Here's my counteroffer, Lyra said, and called ice with everything she had. It erupted from the ground in a wall of frozen spikes surrounding Morgana in a cage of crystalline bars 3 feet thick. The council members stumbled backward in shock, hitting the ice barrier hard. You actually think you can trap me? Morgana snarled. No, Lyra said calmly. I think I can delay you long enough for us to reach the exit. I think I can prove that Frostborns aren't as easy to control as you believed. And I think I can make you regret every single moment you kept my mother prisoner. She turned and ran. Draven and Silas were already moving, racing for the tunnel on the far side of the chamber at full speed. Behind her, Lyra heard Morgana shouting commands in languages that hurt to hear, heard the sound of ice shattering under magical assault. But they had a head start now, and Lyra wasn't finished. She placed both hands on the chamber floor as she ran. Ice spread from the contact points in a sheet coating the stone in a surface slick as polished glass. Behind her, she heard cursing as Pursuit tried to navigate the suddenly treacherous ground and failed spectacularly. They reached the far tunnel and dove inside. Draven grabbed Lyra's arm, pulling her along as they sprinted through darkness. Silas kept pace despite his injury, adrenaline overriding pain receptors. That, Silas panted, was either brilliant or suicidal. Both, Lyra gasped. Definitely both. They ran for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The tunnel twisted sharply upward now. Lyra could feel it clearly. They were getting closer to the surface, closer to escape and open air. And then they saw it. Light. Real light, not magical glow or headlamps. Actual daylight filtering down from above. The exit. They emerged into late afternoon sun, squinting painfully after so long underground. The opening deposited them on a hillside covered in dense pine forest. In the distance, mountains rose against the sky painted in shades of orange and purple. "We made it," Lyra breathed. "Not yet." Draven was already moving, checking their position with tactical focus. "We're still 20 miles from Northern Pack territory, and Morgana knows we're out of the caves now." As if summoned by his words, helicopters appeared on the horizon, 3 of them, moving fast and direct. "Run," Draven said. They ran. The forest was thick enough to hide them from direct aerial view, but not thick enough to muffle the sound of helicopters overhead. Lyra's lungs burned as she pushed through underbrush branches, tearing at her jacket. Behind her, she could hear Draven coordinating their escape route while Silas covered their rear despite his limp. "There's a river 2 miles northeast," Draven called out. "If we can reach it, we can use the water to mask our thermal signatures." 2 miles might as well be 20 if those helicopters have infrared," Silas shouted back. Lyra's mind raced. Infrared detected heat signatures. But what about cold? She skidded to a stop. "Wait, I have an idea." Draven turned back. "We don't have time for ideas. We need to keep moving. This will take 30 seconds. Lyra dropped to her knees and pressed both palms flat against the forest floor. "Trust me," she called her power. Not explosive defensive ice. Something different, something subtle. She pushed cold into the ground, spreading it outward in a circle 50 feet wide. The temperature around them dropped dramatically, 10 degrees, then 20, then 30. Frost formed on pine needles. The underbrush turned white. Their breath became visible clouds. "You're creating a cold pocket," Silas said with dawning understanding. "Their infrared will show a temperature anomaly, but won't be able to distinguish individual heat signatures inside it." "Exactly. Now we move. Stay within the frost zone." They ran again, but this time Lyra maintained the cold pocket around them, expanding and contracting it as they moved. It was exhausting. Using power while running drained her faster than anything she'd attempted before. But the helicopters overhead began circling in obvious confusion, their search patterns becoming erratic. They reached the river as the sun touched the horizon. The water was glacier runoff, moving fast and cold enough to numb exposed skin in seconds. Lyra collapsed on the bank, gasping. "Can't maintain the cold much longer." "You don't have to," Draven pointed downstream. "Look." A convoy of vehicles was moving along the riverbank road, trucks with Northern Pack insignia clearly visible. The lead vehicle stopped and a woman stepped out. She was tall, maybe 60 years old, with silver hair pulled back in a severe braid and eyes that missed absolutely nothing. Maya Winters, leader of the Northern Pack Alliance. "You're 6 hours early," she called out. "And you look like hell." Draven helped Lyra to her feet. "Morgana found us in the caves. We had to improvise." Maya's expression hardened immediately. "She's here in Montana." She was. Probably still is. She's not going to give up easily. "Then we don't give her the chance." Maya gestured to her trucks. "Load up. We're 30 minutes from headquarters. Full security lockdown until we can coordinate a proper response." Northern Pack headquarters was nothing like Lyra expected. Instead of a rustic cabin compound, it was a modern facility built into the side of a mountain. Concrete and steel reinforced against everything from conventional weapons to magical assault. Guard towers at each corner. Walls topped with razor wire and sophisticated sensor equipment. "Welcome to Fort Winter," Maya said, as their convoy passed through 3 separate security checkpoints. Built 15 years ago, when it became clear the council wasn't going to respect territorial boundaries. "We've got housing for 500 supplies for 3 months of siege and enough firepower to hold off a small army." "Have you had to use it?" Lyra asked. "Twice. Both times the council backed down once they realized we were serious." Maya's smile was sharp. They prefer targets that don't shoot back. They ended up in a conference room with reinforced walls and no windows. A long table dominated the space, surrounded by chairs already fueling with pack leaders. Lyra counted 15 people, all radiating the kind of authority that came from leading warriors. Maya took the head of the table. "Everyone, this is Lyra Frostwind. Draven you all know. The young man with the limp is Silas Thornwood, recently freed from a council curse." She gestured for them to sit. "Lyra, these are the Alpha leaders of the Northern Alliance. They've agreed to hear your evidence before deciding whether to support your cause." Lyra pulled out the USB drive with the hands that trembled slightly. A technician set up a laptop and projector. Within minutes, the evidence was loaded and ready to present. "Before we start," Lyra said, standing at the head of the table, "I want you to understand what you're about to see. It's not pleasant, it's not easy to watch, but it's the truth the council has spent 33 years trying to hide." She clicked the first file. Financial records appeared on the screen. Payments from council accounts to private contractors. Dates and amounts that corresponded with known Frostborn deaths. The 1992 purge wasn't random violence, Lyra explained. It was coordinated genocide. 41 Frostborns killed in one night across 12 states. The council paid for each execution, $3 million per target. Angry murmurs spread around the table. The numbers were damning. She clicked through communication logs. Messages between Morgana Vale and various operatives discussing targets' methods, cleanup procedures, clinical language describing murder. They called it Operation Winter's End, Lyra continued. The goal was complete elimination of the Frostborn bloodline. They viewed us as a threat to their authority. She clicked to the video file. "This is Helena Frostwind, my mother's older sister. This footage is from November 7th, 1992. The room fell silent as the execution played out. Lyra forced herself to watch again, to remember why she was doing this. When it ended, the silence stretched unbearably long. Finally, an older male alpha spoke. "This is clear genocide, violation of the supernatural accords. If this evidence is authentic, the council has committed crimes that warrant complete dissolution." "It's authentic," Draven confirmed. "I've had my people verify everything. The money trail is real. The communications have digital signatures that match council encryption protocols. The video footage has been analyzed by experts. None of it is manipulated." Another alpha female with facial scars leaned forward. "Even if we believe this completely taking action against the council means war, they control most packed territories. They have backing from human governments. They have resources we can't match." "They have all of that because we've allowed them to have it," Maya said firmly. "Because we've been afraid to challenge them. But stability built on genocide isn't stability. It's oppression. And it ends now." "You're asking us to risk everything," the scarred alpha said. "I'm asking you to do what's right," Maya replied. "To stand with me while we expose this publicly. Let the world see what the council has done. Let every pack, every bloodline, every supernatural community make their own informed decision." The alphas exchanged glances. Lyra could see them weighing risks, calculating odds. The vote was called. 15 pack leaders deciding whether to support revolution. 14 in favor. 1 abstention. "The Northern Alliance stands with Lyra Frostwind," Maya announced formally. "We will provide security resources and testimony as needed. The council's reign ends at the Winter Summit in 3 days." The summit preparation consumed the next 72 hours. Lyra practiced her presentation dozens of times, refining the narrative. Timing the evidence reveals perfectly. Maya brought in hostile questioners who tried to rattle her, teaching her to deflect attacks and stay focused under pressure. On the third morning, Lyra woke to find formal attire hanging on her door. A dress in ice blue that shimmered when it moved, paired with a jacket that looked woven from frost itself. A note was attached in Maya's handwriting. "For the daughter of winter, show them what Frostborn really means." The convoy left at dawn. 15 vehicles, 200 Alliance fighters, and one determined 19-year-old carrying evidence that could topple a government. They reached Helena as the sun hit its zenith. The city was transformed for the summit. Security checkpoints blocked major roads, and at the center, the Great Hall rose like a cathedral. Council enforcers were everywhere. The Great Hall doors swung open as Lyra approached. 600 seats arranged in a semicircle around a central stage, every seat filled, all of them turning to stare. At the far end, in an elevated box, sat Morgana Vale. Their eyes met. Morgana's expression was carefully neutral, but Lyra could see the tension. Maya appeared at Lyra's elbow. "You're scheduled to speak in 40 minutes. Use that time to center yourself." Finally, the moderator called her name. "The floor is yours." Lyra stood. Her legs felt like water, but she forced them to carry her to the stage. She reached the podium. 600 faces stared. Cameras broadcast her image to millions. She took a breath and began. "My name is Lyra Frostwind. I am 19 years old. 3 days ago, I was scheduled to undergo forced bonding. I refused. I ran. And in running, I discovered evidence of crimes the council has spent 33 years hiding." She clicked the remote. The evidence appeared. She walked through it methodically. Financial records, communication logs, video footage that made people gasp. "I'm not asking for revenge, I'm asking for justice." She looked directly at Morgana. "And I'm asking Council Prime Vale to explain why her own sister has been imprisoned and tortured for 15 years. The hall erupted. Morgana tried to respond, but was drowned out. Then, cutting through the chaos, a voice from the back. "She's telling the truth." A man stood, late 40s, council enforcer insignia. "My name is Commander Garrett Stone. I was part of Operation Winter's End. Council Prime Vale gave the orders personally. I have documentation, and I'm willing to testify." Morgana's face went white. The hall exploded with demands for her arrest. "Council Prime Vale," the moderator said, voice shaking. "You are suspended pending investigation." Security moved in. Not council security, summit security. Morgana's eyes found Lyra. There was murder in that gaze. And fear. And the knowledge that she'd lost. She was escorted out. 3 months later, spring came to Montana. Lyra stood on Alliance headquarters balcony watching snow melt from mountains. Behind her, the new Supernatural Governance Council was in session. 20 representatives elected democratically. She wasn't part of the council yet. She'd asked for time to heal. They'd agreed. Elara was recovering in the medical wing. The extraction had done permanent damage, but she was alive, present, free. Corbin was serving 25 years in federal prison. Lyra had visited once, not to forgive, for closure. Morgana's trial had concluded last week. Life imprisonment, powers permanently bound. "Thought I'd find you here." Draven joined her on the balcony. "Maya's looking for you, something about training newly discovered Frostborns." 12 more have come forward since the summit, Lyra said. "That's incredible. You made it safe for them to exist, the daughter of Winter who brought down an empire." Lyra leaned against the railing. "Do you ever think about the bond, the mate recognition, every day? What do we do about it? Whatever you want. The bond is there dormant, but it's your choice whether to explore it." He moved closer. "I don't force bonds. That includes my own. What if I said I wanted to try, not formal bonding, just getting to know each other, seeing if what the magic recognized is real? Then I'd say I'd like that very much." He smiled. "You're not what I expected that night." "What did you expect?" "Someone who needed saving. Instead, I found someone who saved me." Lyra took his hand. "Not a bond, just a choice." Behind them, the council chamber doors opened. Voices spilled out. Debate about the messy work of building something new. Maya emerged. "There you are. We've got 15 Frostborns now. A whole family came forward. They need training and someone to tell them it's safe to exist." "I'll go," Lyra said. Below them, the mountains were turning green. Ice was melting. Winter was giving way to spring. And in Alliance headquarters in council chambers, in packed territories across North America, the world was being remade. Not through violence, through truth, through one girl who refused to be claimed and instead claimed her own destiny. In Northern Pack Medical Wing, Elara Frostwind watched her daughter through the window, saw her standing with the AlphaKing hand in hand, choosing her future. "That's my girl," she whispered. "My brave, brilliant girl." Lyra Frostwind was supposed to be victim 42 of the 1992 Frostborn Purge. Instead, she became the woman who exposed genocide and toppled the most powerful supernatural government in North America. She didn't do it with armies. She did it with truth, courage, and the refusal to be controlled. In the year following the summit revelation, by the first anniversary of Operation Winter's End's exposure, 200 corrupted bonds were broken. 47 new Frostborns emerged from hiding. The Supernatural Governance Council implemented democratic reforms that gave voice to bloodlines silenced for centuries. Lyra chose to train the next generation while serving as advisor to the new council. She chose to explore her bond with Draven, slowly building something real. She chose measured forgiveness for her father, though trust would take years. She chose to stand as living proof that one person with conviction can shatter systems of oppression. Because winter doesn't bow to tyrants. It waits, it grows stronger, and when spring comes, it melts to reveal new growth. If this story moved you, if you believe in standing up for what's right, even when the odds seem impossible, remember, you're never as powerless as they want you to believe. Your truth, spoken clearly and courageously, is more dangerous to corruption than any weapon ever forged. This has been the Frostborn Omega's vengeance.